So thank you guys for coming. And I'm rescheduling after the snow day that turned to be a bust. But I know I was grateful to have the day off. So I'll let the speakers introduce themselves. They're all colleagues of mine from the Strategic Design MBA program at Philadelphia University. And they're all doing some really amazing stuff. So I'll let them talk about theirs.
Should I talk about what I'm doing as well as?
Yeah, introduce yourself, and just how you're using it, and then we'll get more in depth. Okay, and then just remember, Dan's filming, so if we can talk up so that they can
sure. Hi everyone, I'm Nikia Hill. I work as a business design strategist for Mount Airy USA. Mount Airy USA is a community development corporation. We do neighborhood revitalization. We help immigrant entrepreneurs, we help existing businesses and people who want to start businesses in the neighborhood of Mount Airy in Philadelphia. And so as business design strategist, I focus on business services, and I use design thinking to unmake people's minds up. I use it to challenge existing norms, and I use it to help engage business owners and entrepreneurs in really understanding who their customer is and how they can better serve them.
Cool. I like that saying. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm Brady Halligan. I am the Director of Business Development and Strategy at the Green Program. I am a Rutgers graduate, undergraduate. I studied environmental policy and international business at Rutgers in New Brunswick in the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences. And also, as all of us recently graduated about a year or 2 years ago from the Philadelphia Strategic Design MBA program. So what I do, and what was drawn to me to design thinking, is I run an international educational program focused on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So basically it's a short-term, high-impact program where we take university students from all different types, majors and things, get them industry experience within renewable energy, for example, and take them through kind of a transformational experience to help them get jobs out of college. So what was drawn to design thinking for me is that we were at a critical point in our business where certain things started to happen and we wanted to reevaluate. So I leverage design thinking in my business to kind of reframe problems, really understand who our clients are, who our students are, and just put really a more human factor on what we're doing to make sure that we're not just involved in really servicing the needs from all different types of students, universities, and things. So I'm excited to chat with you guys.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Rolfing. I work as a consultant in the energy efficiency field. So it kind of, I span both policy and real estate. And what I do is work with utility companies to help their customers be more conscious about their decisions on how they're using energy. The reason why I was really drawn to design thinking and this program was because I'm marrying policy with the private industry, and you have to be extremely creative. But yet the private industry wants to serve their customers. So understanding their customers is something that they are lacking. So I saw that as an opportunity to understand design thinking methods and theories to really help with that. I'm a systems thinker, so I really think holistically, because everything I'm doing and creating as designing programs or implementing programs has to, or every step in that process is affected by the previous step or the next step. So it's something that is embedded in my work, and it's embedded in what I do on a daily basis.
I'm Cathy Bedenbaugh. I am actually currently a student of the SD MBA program. I'm in cohort 5. So I am 3 courses in, so I can give that knee-deep, I'm in the middle of it perspective. My undergrad actually is a fine arts degree in textile design. I've been doing textile design, whether project management, staff management, process management, for about 20 years. And what attracted me to this program is actually sort of a flip of what they've gone through. I already come from a really creative place. So I'm marrying that to the business side because my work life has always had me do much more business intensive functions. So that's actually what brought me to this program.
Okay, great. So, for not everybody here knows what design thinking is. So could you, in a couple words, say what is design thinking to you and why it's important to know? Okay, if you want to go in order, that's fine.
We can have
Build on.
I was like, I have the talking stick.
There's one behind you.
I mean, I can jump in and say something if that's all right. So, the thing about design thinking is like everybody uses it in a different way, and how they use it in large scope, small scope to solve a problem in business, in life, or everything. So to me, design thinking is, and there's imagery of what design thinking, the scrambled craziness of what problems are and systems and how they interact and interchange. And design thinking is a way, it's a process for you to analyze all the craziness of life or business problems or potential solutions, things like that, and really start to frame what an actual problem might be, and really start to think about a solution come out of that learning journey from understanding that process. So to me, design thinking it's a tool and a resource, but it is more just like a learning journey and process to going through solving a problem, whatever that may be. Any other buzzwords you want to throw in?
Innovation.
I would add to that I think that an important part of design thinking for me is the posture of design thinking, and I don't mean that as a physical thing. I mean it as we talk about the comfort with ambiguity, so that you're not working towards solving the problem to get an answer immediately. You kind of soak in the problem and really try to understand what the problem is and whether you're looking at the right question. So Brady talked about reframing. I think reframing is really important, and I think also understanding that your answer might not be the right answer, and that you're following the process multiple times, and that's what you should expect to do. So a lot of times folks are like, I did design thinking, I used some Post-its, and now I have an answer, and that probably is not your final answer. So I like to say that you need to let your ideas live long enough so that they can have babies, because the babies are really the answer. But the parents are not the answer, but if you look at the parent and you say, okay, this is what I'm doing, you don't get the great innovation that comes with letting yourself live in the ambiguity of that problem.
Great analogy.
I love your analogy. Yeah. Just to kind of build off Nikia, and I'm just more or less, it's easier for me to just talk about what happens in work for me. I work in a very traditional MBA type of world. All of my colleagues got traditional MBAs. So one thing that I bring is that I listen. They feel that they have an answer, and that goes back to what Nikia said. They know from school that this is what worked. But right now, everything's changing so rapidly. You can't say that this one model worked with this type of situation is going to work in this situation. So understanding and doing the research and the ethnographic research and listening, that's design thinking for me.
In the background that I come from, there's also the fast fail. From a product development view, you embrace that you're going to have, let's say, 100 designs, and you're going to love all of them, but only 60 will actually go anywhere. 40 are meant to die. And in order to get to the great 60, you have to do all 100. So it's embracing this failure process. That's also part of design thinking.
Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a conversation.
Well, so what tools do you use? I mean, in terms of design products, in terms of software, in terms of tables, in terms of visuals to get you to, you've got this big box of a problem you're trying to resolve, what tools do each of you use to help you get to
Post-it
that?
notes.
Okay, that was the first one. You said
Post-it notes.
Yeah, the thing about the Post-it note is it's not just having that in the action. The action is really good because it taps into a different side of your brain a little bit, allows you, but it's actually the rapid iteration and prototyping. Like, you know, you don't sit there and think about a solution. You just give yourself a time and you just rapid fire as many ideas as you can as possible. This is one of the things that we learned in the beginning of design thinking, which is very hard for people because, you know, you really, especially coming from traditional business, and then you really dive into a problem and really just find the one answer, when in reality there could be 10 different answers, and you start to find kind of correlations between them to ultimately bring something to fruition that could be greater than what you had initially. So that is the best way to start, I think, but the main tool that I use a lot, because it can be spanned across any different problem or thing, is just the business model canvas. You know, that's not just a design thinking tool, that is just a business tool, but it's a really good way to kind of take the craziness out of everything and really segment it into different departments, and really start to think about how do they interact and the interconnectivity of that. So that's one that I love to use.
Yeah, I'm going to tap on that really quick. The business model canvas is great, especially if you're looking at business plans. You can really put them on a single sheet of paper and see how they all relate to one another, and it's broken into 10 blocks. It's a great tool. For nonprofits, they have a mission model canvas, and I love that actually, being in the nonprofit sector, because it flips it from being about, you know, the monetary side of things and product side of things to the actual service and the impact you're having. So so those are two really amazing tools, and I like how they flip.
So that's software?
It's
a
really
software
it's
package?
just a template.
Yeah.
So it's actually from a book, Alexander Osterwalder.
Okay.
I said that right.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, it's a hard.
Yeah.
I kind of just mumble through
Yeah.
that one sometimes, but
Business model generation.
Thank you.
yeah, it's a really good book, and kind of it's kind of a manual. You can always go back to it, and they give you different business models that have been successful and kind of show you how they work it out, whether that's software, technology, education, different things. So
And they have a website, strategizer.com.
And
It's an arm to it.
I actually use it with my entrepreneurs. I work with immigrant entrepreneurs. We have a program called the Philadelphia Immigrant Innovation Hub, which is a really long word. But we, with our cohorts of immigrant entrepreneurs, we actually walk them through a process over the course of several weeks, and we help them to define their business models. So some of those folks are existing business owners, some of them are people who have an idea, some of them are kind of pre-startup phase. So it's really a great tool, because even people who are existing business owners who have been in business for a long time can't articulate their value proposition, aren't really clear on what their customers really want sometimes, and so I think it's a great tool. Along with I also use the value proposition canvas, which really clarifies the things that customers are trying to get done, and so it's a great way to reframe and understand how to serve people better.
yeah, and if I can really quick, a really good resource just in general is IDEO. IDEO is basically like the design thinking firm. They have just free tools and resources on their website that they basically just give out for free. And it's all different things from empathy maps to different frameworks and things that you can use to kind of start to train your mind to think that way. Because there's basically so many different resources, and people frame their tools differently because it's pretty open and then kind of fairly new as well. So it's kind of nice to see what other tools and things people are pumping out, especially IDEO, since they're kind of the cream of the crop.
Right.
So that's IDEO?
Yep, exactly. IDEO. .org, I think, is their education-facing one, I think.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And then also the D School, Stanford's D School has a ton of free information for business owners, for entrepreneurs, for K-12 education, and Mural is a great online collaborative tool. So if you can't have everyone in one room, it costs money. There are other free versions, but it's like you can post it on your computer screen with people. So like the lo-fi free version of that is Google Slides. Because when I get all the time, because I also work for a nonprofit, so I make a lot of my own templates. I use Google Slides for journey mapping, so to kind of take yourself through a customer's journey to kind of understand what their pain points are, and to understand kind of where they're getting stuck or what's positive or negative about their interaction with your product or your service or whatever. I would say Service Design Network has a ton of information, and let's see, DMI, Design Management Institute, has archived videos.
A lot of free stuff out there.
Yep.
Yeah, there is. And one of the things that all of these tools have in common is it will get you out of letter-sized paper and out either up on a board or in a broader community of thinkers. And that is one of the cornerstones to design thinking, is it's not just you alone thinking through one pathway. It's interconnecting, and you start to end up with much more rich content by being able to explore it, bounce the ideas off of other people, get people who aren't even anywhere near touching what maybe you're working on, because they'll have a completely different perspective. And it's really amazing what happens when you start opening it up instead of keeping it closed and tight.
Yeah, my favorite tool is the whiteboard. I mean, anyone who's been in my office sees that I've got a big glass whiteboard, and it's just like I'm constantly drawing on it or writing. I'm not the doodler of the group, but for me, I try to draw in pictures. I'm just really bad at it, but yeah, that's how like all this work with the SEC has come to play, is utilizing design thinking and the ethnographic research by sitting down with groups of students. And James can attest to that, because he was one of our early on, like run through the process. So, but yeah, so I mean, those are the different types of tools. Tiffany, did you have any others, since you come from a traditional background?
Yeah, I traditionally use Excel, but I use it in a different way. My crazy Excel is my team members think I'm interesting on how I set up, but I think what it comes back to is this point of view. All of these tools are free, but you have to understand, you really have to give yourself a time frame, like Brady had said, a time frame and a goal. So what is it that you want to achieve at the end of this? Do you want to get your customers' journey, or do you want to understand the whole landscape of the project? Because there's so many tools out there. You need to make sure that doesn't create noise as well, because a lot of times that happens where there's too much out there. So I think, and a lot of us, just from going through this for 2 years, really studying everything, we probably have our own favorite tools that we use all the time for accepted things. So really just, once you start using one a lot, then you tend to use that for everything. I use the 5 E's a lot, which is enter, it's
Enter, engage, entice. Well, there's entice,
exit, and
end.
Exit and extend.
Extend. That's what.
Sorry, 5 E's. I haven't used it.
But the 5 E's are specific touch points. So obviously, to engage anybody in any product or service, you have to entice them to utilize it, because obviously that's the marketing side of things. And then, how do they actually come into it? Like, once they decide, yes, this is the product or service for me, how do they engage with you? And then how,
if there's a problem, you can hit an exit point, but then maybe you can leverage that strife, that whatever energy is created from that. And then how can you extend the service, get them to be a repeat customer or a recommender, somebody who will advocate for your company, your service, your school.
Kind of like that closed loop, like let's continue to get people engaged. And another thing is another hard thing on my end, because with these traditional teams, is getting them to utilize these tools with me, because it's so cool when you get their perspective and you put them all up on the board, and that's a whole nother tool, is to analyze everyone's work and see where there's patterns. the patterns are,
That's
it's
always fun.
incredible. So a lot of design thinking is finding patterns, I've found.
And insights.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
I was curious about your organization. Is that, what if you there's an immigrant that lives in New Jersey, is it just for people that in that specific area that you're charity, or?
So we target immigrants in Philadelphia,
Right.
but we definitely have folks who are coming from outside of the city limit, outside of the Philadelphia County limits even. So I think if someone was willing to come across the bridge and they wanted to be a part of the program, they can definitely apply. We have a cohort starting in March, and then we'll have quarterly cohorts going on. So
Okay.
I can give you
So
information after.
it's not like someone says, can you help, if they apply and then you pick which ones you want to help, like that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody have another question, or I can ask?
Can we go over the 5 E's again?
So,
We should also go over the golden
That was
circle.
not one of mine.
I know, now I'm like,
Enter.
it's
Engage.
engage.
Yeah, entice, enter, engage,
Exit.
exit, and extend.
Yeah.
So entice comes first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Entice,
You have to entice them to
enter.
use your product
Well,
or service
that
first.
seemed logical, but.
Yeah.
okay.
But that actually, it seems logical, but that's one of the hardest points to recognize or understand. That's where the listening and ethnographic research comes in. So it's a lot of work to understand how you're going to get them. So like in Facebook, there's a book called, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But they look on Facebook and you're on your phone and you know how you have a like and there's on the Facebook app, there's a number. It's like 5 or 10 because you haven't looked at it, and you see that someone has liked your picture 50 times or 5 times. That entices you to go onto the app. So they've created this enticement to use the app and then keep it, and then they want you to go through all that process. So that's one example.
Another thing that.
Sorry, go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing that I like to, I forget the author, he was just at the Arts and Business Council, Clayton Christensen.
Yes, he's great.
Yeah, he's awesome, and he's got this new book out that he was talking about. He's kind of like an innovation guru, that's kind of his thing. But his new book, it doesn't say design thinking specifically, but it definitely is. And one of the biggest issues with business is that business top-down will create a product for a customer or a service for a customer instead of having the customer or client dictate what the product should be. So what he says is kind of flipping the switch on that. It's like, what do I want to hire that company for? What job do I want to hire that company for? So he's kind of thinking it as a consumer, instead of I want that product or service just for the heck of it and for fun. I'm getting that for a specific job that I want to get done, and why am I going to choose that? So as a business, you start to think about that in a different way of saying, I want to use whatever our capabilities are and resources as a business to make sure that we're doing that job for that individual. And to me, that's just a really cool way about thinking it and kind of training your brain to look at things a little bit differently.
How do you solve your business problems by utilizing design thinking? Or others' business problems, depending on what it is you do.
I would say I've solved a lot of my own business problems by using design thinking as well as other people's business problems, because the work that I do is externally facing, but I do work in an organization, and so I think that part of that is a lot of engaging people and kind of helping them to be open to ideas. So I think that in business, people are used to making a decision, standing behind it, and moving forward. And I think design thinking helps people to back away from that concrete decision making, and I use it to really help people imagine what the solutions could be instead of saying this is what we're going to do. So I use it a lot for that, and then I also use design thinking to really engage and connect customers to each other. So because I work with a community, part of what we're trying to do is to get people to co-create with us and then to collaborate with each other, so that a small organization of people isn't doing all of the work. So allowing people to understand that process is what's happening is design thinking helps me to do that a lot. So even engaging people in that, how are we going to do this? So I use quiet storming a lot in my participatory design sessions, and we start with a question and we say, how might we, or how can we do whatever thing we're trying to do? And so we do a quick kind of post-it, top of mind, throw out all your ideas, look at other people's ideas, and then we kind of move from that process. So that's a normal way for me to actually start, so that whatever happens after that activity has kind of shifted people's brains. And I also do use some improv, which is another way of shifting people's brains. So I think improv, to go back to an earlier question, is a really important tool because you want people to be open and to be able to imagine what the solutions could be instead of deciding on one thing.
One of the ways I use design thinking is, and I've been able to do this in a couple of different settings, is reframing the classic problem solution into success and opportunity. Just switching up the words, because oftentimes what I end up hearing is, if I hear one person utter one little minor complaint, I immediately go into, oh, that's an opportunity. We can fix something. We can invent something. It will get better. And that just gets me going, which is part of the reason why I'm in this program, because it fits so well to the way I already thought. This hybrid thinking where it is not just about defining a problem, but going on the path of searching for solutions.
Any questions about how you could use it or look at it from a business perspective? So what would you say that students should know before they go out into the workplace, or and how they could utilize it now so they have the skill built when they graduate?
My thought process on it is you can start using it now, definitely in any part of your life. Like, I find I use it actually a lot in my personal life, because like I recognize when someone is rapidly prototyping something. If you've ever watched kids play with Legos or Kinects, they will start to build something, they will start to play with it, something will break, and they'll go, oh, I've got to improve that, and they'll go back and they'll do a new prototype, and they will do 40, 50 prototypes in an hour if you watch them. And that is something that we need to do in business, and recognize that, well, let me build a little bit of it, let me try and break it, and then let me go back and improve it. You can do that in almost every aspect of your life. Picking a new route to get from point A to point B in your day is testing a new prototype. And you start adopting it, it starts to switch up your thinking, you get more nimble in your thought processes, less fixed.
I think that being curious and learning how to ask questions, that's still something I'm developing. But if you can ask the right questions and know where to navigate through those stakeholders or through different people, then that will be that's a really good skill in general to take with you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe it's more for you, Tiffany, because you say you work in a world of traditional MBAs, and it's certainly open to anybody. But how do established businesses generally view your design thinking processes? In other words, questioning everything they've done, established processes, this is the way we do things. How do you? That must be challenging in itself, I would think.
Yeah, it's extremely exhausting.
Okay.
How do they? So this is, that's something I go back and forth on. It really, at this point, you do need the higher ups to agree with you, but then there's that middle management level that thinks they need to do what the higher ups want them to do, even though so that's that whole story. But what I what I've learned is a process of strategy through kind of gaining support by different individuals. So I can't just go and push through and say, yeah, that's not going to work. I really have to be strategic, and so I will gain support by multiple people and say, okay, we're going to bring this forward now. That's worked sometimes. It depends on the situation. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Brady, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. Honestly, about a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, I think it was, 2015, I believe, Harvard Business Review did a whole September issue on design thinking. And that was pretty much the first time that like the business world acknowledged design thinking as like an actual tool and resource for successful businesses. And then through that, they had CEOs that say their main function is design thinking to spread it through, like the CEO of Pepsi, for example. She came in and leveraged design thinking, and obviously the sales went up. So, a lot to, I'm not in a corporate world or an area where there's a lot of management and things, so I have creativity to kind of do as I please and get other people, but a lot of it I think has to do with influencing other people, getting them to own their own ideas, and allowing them to take ideas and flourish, and getting other people on board, and then also just proof of concept of, this has been successful for this company or other people. If it comes down to dollars and cents, and it shows that if somebody else is using this, big companies, corporations, entrepreneurs and things, and they do it, the CEO or the president or somebody is going to be like, all right, let's give it a try. So that's one way in which I've heard of other people in our programs kind of getting the upper management on board and out of their departmental silos or the traditional way of doing things. This all comes down to money and dollars and money in the for-profit world, pretty much.
I agree. And just another thing that I do is that I just do it. Really, you can't be scared.
Nikia.
I just do it. Yeah. I will create a slide deck that is something that I want to be implemented, and it will come up, and I will put it out there. Or you just can't be that scared, because I'm sure a lot of the individuals that know that there's a problem, they want to solve it too, but because of the hierarchy or because of traditionally it's just change or that's hard, they don't want to put the work into it. But if you do it, more or less, people will come along.
I would say the other thing too is just the understanding and the knowledge that a lot of traditional consulting firms have acquired design businesses and have kind of swallowed them up, and sometimes they are kind of embedded within the larger consultancy. Sometimes the consultancy kind of shifts and becomes a little more designy, and that's a technical term. So I think that understanding that people who consult for a living acknowledge that this is an important thing is kind of proof of concept. I think the other thing is, on an individual level, if you wait for the point where everyone else is stuck and you use this as a solution to move people forward, people realize they stopped being stuck, and they'll come back to you and say, hey, how do I do that? Can you help me do it again? And so you might be able to find space within a traditional organization, a traditional for-profit organization, where people keep kind of banging their heads against the wall and they can't figure out an alternative, and that this can be that easy, quick, cheap alternative, because it doesn't have to, you can do it for $20, $50, $100, $5. So, I mean, that's a pretty small price point on a balance sheet to move an idea forward and get people moving forward on their goals.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna tell you an example of, I worked for a company that was in a very fixed mindset that we have a way of doing something. And a production manager came and said, I really wish we had this tool. And I had Post-it notes right there in front of me. I was like, oh, well, what would you want this tool to do? And essentially what resulted was a spreadsheet that helped people do a cost analysis of projection before they went to and developed the actual product. They'd never used, it's basically an estimation tool, but by just taking out Post-it notes, you know, a $3 pack of Post-it notes, and getting him to talk to me about what he was frustrated with, what were the hiccups in his process, and sticking him up in the wall, and then just saying, okay, well, what's your most important priority here you need to solve? That was design thinking. That was getting it out loud and visual. And it really, like I said, it resulted in a product that then got adopted very quickly. Some people were a little hesitant. What do you mean we're going to use this tool? It's like, it's easy. You can do it. Yeah. And they're able now to figure out what it's going to cost to do a job before they do it, before they've lost money at the other end of their process. And it was simple.
So quick, just shout out your majors for students.
Oh, marketing.
I'm accounting and finance.
Accounting and management.
Management. So what would be your suggestions to these types of students that are learning traditional accounting, management, finance with some experiential and some like dabbling their toes into this, but what kind of recommendations would you have for them?
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Yeah. You gotta think on this for a second.
If you are really focused in a particular subject, if you're really passionate about it, find somebody who's at the opposite end of what you're focused on and invite them in on, maybe they're proofreading a report you're going to do. Maybe you just need them, you just need to have a great, rich conversation. It will spark your brain in a new direction, and it's an awesome place to be. And it's how really businesses work. They want people to talk to each other. Yeah, that would be.
That's the reason for meetings. It's just not what happens at meetings.
But within a learning environment, if you're super focused on something and you're feeling like some of your thinking's getting maybe a little rote or a little stale, look for those people who are in a different place. If you're a business person, maybe you want to go talk to a nursing person. If you are in marketing, maybe you want to talk to somebody who's dealing in the numbers and cents and getting really into the decimal points of things. It just starts to make you more flexible in your brain.
Yeah. It's tough, I guess, while you're in school because you are so focused in that segment. You got to nail it. You got to get the good grades and take that leap to the next session. But there's little ways in which you can bring design thinking just into your life in general, not so much just your major. Carla kind of mentioned this a little bit, but the simplest thing of actually, instead of writing out ideas nonstop and typing them, actually just first drawing is a really good way to trick your brain into thinking differently. And that can be in anything. So if you're trying to follow a management issue with employees or things like that, or you're trying to figure out accounting and marketing and different things like that, like whatever ideas or whatever problem is, like drawing it out first. I know it sounds stupid and simple and nobody's a good drawer, but actually what comes to fruition after is when you go through that struggle process a little bit of trying to draw out ideas, and then the next part of explaining it to somebody that's outside your realm. So if you were to explain to you what your ideas were, that starts to get really creative and in an interesting kind of diverse space, because you have to first talk about your ideas that are you drew them. And explain to somebody that's completely different, not understanding, and allow them to give you feedback. So little things like that, which kind of taps onto what was said earlier, is really engaging with people outside of your realm. Like that is probably the most crucial part, because that's where you start to say, basically theft, right? You steal. The best artists steal. That's kind of an interesting concept that you go. The more you can kind of expand yourself and be a part and take little bits and pieces of things you like that are useful from different areas, the more you're going to be better suited for your position and where you're going, and kind of getting rid of the baggage that you think won't make you successful or in your role, and taking what other people are doing and leveraging that to get ahead of the game. Because I'm sure you guys know your classmates. It's a competitive thing right now. Everybody's trying to compete. It's a race, especially in business school. It can really be depressing and tough. How do you differentiate yourself? You get out of there. You get out. You put your mind somewhere else, and you learn from other people doing it. And you're going to come back fresh with ideas, motivated, and just a different perspective. That's probably that's how I started doing it a little bit. And it eventually you'll find your way going through with when you get into your career. You'll start to say, hey, this actually works because, especially in big business and corporations and things, the departments and things, they're really just like close knit and that's it. So if you start training your mind a little bit to get out of that, you're going to be set up pretty well.
And when he says draw, we're not talking like Van Gogh. We're
No.
talking stick figures. We're talking squiggly lines. We're talking the old-fashioned box with a triangle top with the, to make the house. And like there's even a little worksheet that says if you can draw these 9 things, you can draw anything, and it's true. And as an anecdote, we just had a speaker last weekend who came in and told a story about taking Legos. She worked for the federal government, taking Legos to a meeting in the White House. And each color of the Legos represented a component of human resources. Here were our specialists, here were our linguists, here were our strategic builders, and asking some very high-ranking staff to build the teams they needed to answer a problem using Legos. So drawing is one option. You can also use symbolic objects in place of drawing.
Yeah, for example.
Yeah.
I keep looking at it. and
Our
go,
Lego
"Wow."
prototypes
What a setup
here.
that was.
We, during our open house, we asked students who came in during the Lego times to design the classroom of the future for business students. And interestingly enough, all 4 of these were done at very different times, and they didn't see each other's work, but yet they all created the same thing. So that tells us that, that they want classrooms, or that you guys want classrooms that are more interactive and engaging, where, the professor's not at the front of the room and you're all sitting in lines. You don't want that traditional classroom and stuff. And it was interesting because the dean got to see these and he was like, so as we plan for the future, that's why we're leaving them up.
Well, that example right there goes back to how can you use this in the big corporate section is like prototyping. I mean, get something out there that is just visual so you can better represent it to somebody else. And then an aha moment of the dean saying, I had no idea. That is way more powerful than somebody say, I want classrooms with chairs and the professor away from in front of me with the standard lecture. Like, okay, I get it, but what? That's what, and that can be built upon, So that is a perfect example. I see what you did there with that. It's a nice setup.
There's also in design thinking, and it's embracing the fact that you're going to, like I said earlier, get off of that sheet. You're not going to write somebody a report to get them to embrace where your head is. It is getting it up on the wall and letting them be participants with it. We all love to go to the movies. It's such an engaging process because it's big. It's in front of us. There's sound. In pulling a design process into your work environment and having it, be visual, invites people to be able to comment on it and become part of your thinking community. It's one of the easiest ways.
And I would say that, I don't know if I answered, for me, 2 things, problem isomorphs and lateral thinking, which are big fancy words. But lateral thinking is about taking a completely unrelated idea and using it to be a part of whatever you're working on. So if you thought about this and you went to kindergarten and birds, then how do you help that? If you're stuck, that might help you solve the problem. I don't know how we would solve a problem in kindergarten and birds, but you get a new idea that's completely out of the ordinary, and you also have a new way to frame and understand your problem. Project or isomorphs, someone may have already solved your problem somewhere else. So if you can find that solution, how do you make that your solution where you are? And I think that when you have a project that's due and you're under the wire and you're stuck and your brain won't work, it's a great way to not procrastinate, but to be doing something different so that your brain can readjust itself and you can get your work done. So I use those 2 things all the time, and I think that they're really helpful, and they're quick and easy, and you don't have to do them with other people. You can do them by yourselves, or you can do them as a team.
Just to add, I think the one thing that's really important is to do uncomfortable things, because that's what's going to get you ready for the business world. Be in a team that you know no one. Be in a team where you are not like anyone. That's what will get you ready. Because when your boss says you need to go do this, or your manager or whoever, or you want to go do something to prove something, you have to be confident and comfortable that it's going to be weird and ambiguous. Or else it won't happen, and then you won't get ahead, or you won't get what you want. So really make that.
And I would say the other thing is really looking at your who uses your product or service. Or who potentially could, if you're thinking of starting a business, or if you're looking at a company, who uses that company's services. And that could even help for interviewing, like, that you've studied their business enough that you're interested in being part of it. But who are their extreme users? Who barely uses their service, but they still dabble in it, and then who, uses it like daily. And understanding why, by talking to customers, and with things like LinkedIn and Facebook and any of the social media platforms, you can start to see, what are people saying about different companies and products and services and things like that. And I mean, I know we've each all, gone on and said, hey, you work for this company, can I ask you some questions? Mm-hmm. Tiffany and I were on a project for Restoration Hardware, as they were rebuilding all their stores and completely going to an interesting brick and mortar store where everybody else is pulling away and going more online. Why? What were they doing differently? And and basically they're curators of experiences so that you want to live in their, with their furniture. But it's an interesting model to look at and understand the why and who is buying their stuff. And we actually looked at it from a supply chain standpoint, so it was a really interesting project. But looking at different things like that, and it also helps when you're doing presentations in class, by bringing in these elements of the user experience. Your professors know that you've actually done your homework and that you understand, the business that you're presenting on. So those are my 2 points from the academic standpoint.
Since I'm currently a student, one of the things in listening to that, your professors or your adjuncts, they are also your customer. So if you want to hack your learning experience, particularly in a competitive environment, and you're like, I want to be the one who gets the A, figure out what your customer wants. We've got someone in my current cohort who's really good at figuring out what deliverables the professor wants, even if they've never said what it is they're looking for. And I always listen for the questions she asks, because she gets that information, and I'm not noting it down. So it's like, oh, I better make sure to keep that in mind and this in mind. But if you've got, like, just as low users, high users, if you've got assistant professors who usually look at most of the work with a final pass through by the main professor, then you want to speak to your assistant professors. They are your customers under that circumstance. It's just a different way of thinking through it.
So I'm going to ask one last question, and then, they'll be here for a few minutes to mill around if you want to ask some specific questions individually or whatnot. So the topic was, what does design thinking have to do with business? What's your one line?
Business? Yeah. I wish I could come up with an intelligent,
Single line?
Yeah.
Well,
it is. Yeah, it's everything. It creates sustainable economies. I mean, really, because we're finding what people want.
Yeah, and design thinking is not like a new thing. Like, it's been around forever. There's people that use design thinking. I mean, designers are design thinkers, and there's people in business like Nike. When they started, they were creating shoes for runners to run faster on the track. Like, they were designing products kind of based on what the consumer needs. So, like, design thinking for business is everything because it's within every area. It's a resource and tool and a process that can be used across. And and ultimately, I think what it does is really just draws innovation. And innovation is a word that's just used way too much about everything. But just within a business, an innovation simply could just be a new solution, a new value proposition, a cost-efficient way to work your supply chain. So for business, it's just a way to solve problems in a more efficient fun manner, in my opinion. I mean, just design thinking is just a blast because you're just uncomfortable, you're new, you're working with your hands, you're thinking differently, and you're not just like focused and stressed on this crazy problem because you're thinking about it from so many different angles that it can get exciting once you start to get a little, ooh, what if, and you build upon it. So, yeah, it's everything.
I like that. It's asking yourself, what if?
Yeah. Did I say that? Cool.
Yeah.
Here, you came up with
Yeah.
a one-liner.
And I tend to think of it, if business, if economies, small or big, are a wheel, then design thinking is the motivation that helps that wheel to turn. You know, economies can grow and shrink based on how it's moving. Design thinking is going to be the thing that makes the movement happen.
Yeah, and that's an amazing point. I think design thinking is really being used to scale and grow in business. Obviously, design thinking is used as an entrepreneur. How do I bring something to market, right? Design thinking is used in that whole aspect. But then design thinking is used to, how do I reach a new market? What's the first thing I do to try to reach a new market? You gotta understand what that market wants. You know, why am I not reaching that already? That question. And then how do I grow my business to launch a new product? Or, you know, what's that product gonna be? Well, what's needed out there in the market? So, you know, I really do see design thinking just used from, you know, early stage on, you know, starting something to growth to
Forecasting the future.
forecasting the future.
And it can also be used to shrink a market. There's an example of Turner Network Television restructuring themselves back in the 90s to be much more specific and therefore more successful at what they were doing. But it meant shrinking their programming. It was different. It was new. It made a lot of people nervous, but it turned what they were doing around, and it made them a niche market instead of just to everybody. So it can be used to expand, but it can also be to strategically shrink and make more value.
Interestingly enough, like I was going to ask one other question, and then could you name one big company that students might have heard about that's utilizing design thinking? And of course, IBM comes to my mind. Not just because we know somebody who's working there now in their design thinking stage, but you know, they're transforming their whole business model from the old, you know, blue business suits and boring box computers to a whole. I mean, they're going off into whole new products.
Comcast is investing a lot of money into design thinking. I mean, they're not calling it design thinking, but the people they were hiring are design thinkers and strategists and all about user experience to better their customer service, which is much needed for them to grow and things. So, or just keep their market share. So yeah, I mean, to keep it local, Comcast is you know, really investing in this. So it's starting to get mainstream.
The Mayo clinics.
Yep.
Healthcare is a huge place where design thinking is used. But I think that as far as design thinking and connecting it with business, I think it's really important to understand that you're dealing with human beings, and so that human-centered part of design thinking is so important. So if you are focused on who needs something, you'll understand that those people are going to change over time. You're going to understand that their children might not be the same, might have the same values or might not have the same values. So as you're trying to think about your bottom line and trying to figure out how to generate income based on these humans who make crazy decisions and who may not follow your financial models or may not stick to their scripts, if you can remember that we're dealing with humans, I think that focusing on that can really solve problems. So I think the healthcare sector is really starting to understand that the way that they were doing things is not the way that they can continue. And so I think you can get ahead of the curve with design thinking because you aren't stuck in that model of this is how we used to do it, so this is how we have to keep doing it.
In public service and public works, they're starting to embrace more and more design thinking. At the federal level, they had an innovation lab for their Department of Management. I don't know if it's still there.
The Department of Veterans Affairs is definitely.
So you know, those are huge behemoths that have a hard time moving and being agile, but they're starting to embrace it. And to touch on something from earlier, constraints, like pushing yourself recognizing that if you don't have enough money, that's an opportunity, that there's energy there. If you don't have enough of a natural resource, there's energy there. There's creative thinking that happens in trying to solve those particular little issues. If you've only got 10 minutes to do this task, that's actually opportunity, because it really forces your brain to think in a different place. So the other thing that almost every industry is starting to recognize is with limitations, there is opportunity.
Okay, well, thank you guys. If you want to have a chance to practice design thinking, the Global Service Jam is being held here this weekend. That's a great, I mean, literally it's all about design thinking, using the whole entire process to solve a world-related issue around a secret theme that's revealed to us by the global organizers Friday evening. So if you can come Friday or you can come Saturday, preferably you can come the whole Friday and Saturday, because it is a team and it is a process, and so it's built upon. But if you can only come Friday or Saturday, we definitely want to see you here. It's a lot of fun. Bring people outside the School of Business. We'd like to have more people. We do have several people coming from outside the organization. Tiffany and Nikia are joining us. I know we have somebody coming from the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business. We have, where's Kate? Yeah.
Or Marriott.
No.
Marriott, I'm sorry. Marriott.
Yeah. Okay. So from Marriott Hotels. So we have, different people coming in from industry. We also are twinning with San Francisco, and they have a whole group of all professionals that are joining them, and we'll be engaging with them via video throughout the weekend and pitching our ideas to them and then getting feedback. So
and creating with people who are professionals, like doing a service jam and working in that context is a great way to connect with people if you're looking for a job or an internship. That opportunity to really be in that space helps them to get to know you, and it's a great way to build relationships. There are people I met at service jams who I still speak to who I would never have met otherwise. So it's creating with people is a great way to make connections.
Right, absolutely. And then on the 23rd, we're going to be hearing from a couple of different alumni on what it's like the first few years out of college. What can you expect? And then on the 24th, we'll be taking a small little walking trip over to Waterfront Ventures. They are creating a waterfront lab. If you've heard of WeWork or met on Airy USA, they're creating an innovation lab and WeWork space here in Camden. And their whole goal is about working with aspiring entrepreneurs and existing entrepreneurs to bring their businesses here to Camden and expand. As you know, we have 9 large companies, Subaru being one of them, that's moving into Camden in the next few years. So they're building their space right now, and the whole EDS to MEDS corridor on this side of the bridge is happening here. So yeah, so it's a lot of great things and a lot of great networking opportunities. So sign up, and thank you guys all for coming. And if you didn't have a chance to sign in, we need to get you logged in there, and hopefully we'll see you this weekend.